The galactic refugee station Threshold 7 had seen countless species pass through its sterile corridors. But none had caused quite as much chaos as the small, scaled creature currently terrorizing Docking Bay 3. Scar was approximately the size of a Terran house cat, though comparing him to anything so docile would be a grave insult to his ferocity. His obsidian scales bristled with bioelectric energy, his 6 eyes glowed a menacing crimson, and his triple rows of needle-sharp teeth had already sent 4 station medics running for their lives. The Vrelnian species to which he belonged were apex predators from a death world classified as approach with extreme caution by the Galactic Council. And Scar was just a juvenile. Stay back. Commander Thros, a towering Kelphite with 4 arms and military-grade exo-armor, barked at the gathered crowd. This creature is extremely dangerous. We're waiting for the xenobiology containment team. The crowd of aliens maintained a respectful distance, murmuring amongst themselves. Several species had already filed formal complaints. The Delphinian ambassador had threatened to leave the station entirely if that abomination wasn't dealt with immediately. Scar crouched in the center of the bay, hissing at anything that moved. His small body trembled not with aggression, the observant might note, but with something closer to terror. He'd been separated from his pack during a raid on his homeworld, smuggled halfway across the galaxy, and dumped here when his captors fled an inspection. Now he was alone, frightened, and reacting the only way his instincts knew how, with pure, unbridled aggression. That's when Mira Ven walked into the docking bay. The human woman stood barely 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair pulled into a practical bun and the worn jumpsuit of a freelance cargo hauler. She carried a duffel bag over one shoulder and was reviewing something on her datapad, completely oblivious to the standoff ahead. "Ma'am, stop!" Commander Thros's voice boomed across the bay. "There's a dangerous..." But Mira had already spotted Scar. "Oh," she said simply, her eyes lighting up. "It's a baby." The entire crowd seemed to inhale collectively. Several aliens began backing toward the exits. Mira set down her duffel bag and walked directly toward the hissing, sparking ball of fury. Scar's growl intensified, his scales standing completely on end. Bioelectric discharge danced between his spines, a warning display that had made grown Vrelnian hunters back down. "Ma'am, that creature has already injured," Thros began. "Shh," Mira said absently, not even looking at the commander. Her eyes were fixed on Scar. She stopped about 6 feet away and crouched down, making herself smaller. The docking bay had gone completely silent, except for Scar's continuous, rumbling growl. "Hey there, little guy," Mira said softly. "You're scared, aren't you?" "Yeah. This place is pretty overwhelming." Scar's hissing grew louder. His haunches tensed, preparing to pounce. Every alien in the bay was certain they were about to witness a gruesome mauling. Mira slowly extended her hand, not reaching for Scar, just holding it out, palm down. She didn't try to touch him. She simply waited, speaking in low, soothing tones that seemed absurdly inadequate for the situation. "Nobody here's gonna hurt you," she murmured. Scar's growling faltered, just for a moment. His 6 eyes blinked in asynchronous sequence, a sign of confusion in his species. Minutes passed. The crowd watched in horrified fascination as the human simply waited. She didn't move closer, didn't make sudden gestures, didn't show any fear whatsoever. She just maintained that calm, patient presence. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Scar's scales began to lower. His bioelectric discharge decreased. His growling softened to something more questioning than threatening. Then, in a moment that would be replayed on galactic news feeds for weeks, Scar took a tentative step forward. Then, another. His small, clawed feet scraped against the deck plating. He stopped just inches from Mira's outstretched hand, sniffing cautiously. Mira smiled. And then she did something that no xenobiologist, no trained handler, No sane being in the entire sector would have attempted. She booped his nose. Her index finger gently tapped the tip of Scar's scaled snout, a gesture so simple, so innocuous, so utterly human, that half the aliens watching didn't even understand what they'd just witnessed. Scar froze completely. His 6 eyes went wide. His mouth hung slightly open, rows of teeth forgotten. Then he made a sound that Vrelnians were not supposed to make, a small, confused chirp. Mira booped his nose again. This time, Scar leaned into it. His eyes began to close in what could only be described as contentment. The deadly predator, the terror of Docking Bay 3, melted like butter under the simple, affectionate gesture. "There we go," Mira said, grinning. "Not so scary after all. Are you?" She stood up, and Scar immediately panicked, but not with aggression. He jumped up on his hind legs, pawing at her knees, making desperate little chirping sounds. He wanted another boop. Mira obliged, tapping his nose again. Scar's entire body wriggled with joy, his tail whipping back and forth. Commander Thross's jaw had literally dropped open. "What? How did you—" "He's just a kid," Mira said, scooping Scar up into her arms. The deadly predator immediately curled against her chest, actually purring with contentment. "Scared kids get aggressive. It's universal." "That's a Vrelnian death spawn," a Kelphite observer hissed. "They're classified as babies that need somebody to care about them," Mira interrupted firmly. She scratched behind Scar's auditory ridges, and his purring intensified. "Aren't you, buddy?" "Doom," Scar responded by headbutting her chin, then pressing his snout against her face, clearly demanding more boops. Over the following weeks, Scar became something of a station legend. He refused to leave Mira's side, following her everywhere, with the devotion of an imprinted duckling. Whenever she stopped moving for more than 30 seconds, he would sit at her feet and stare at her with all 6 eyes until she booped his nose. Other species began timing how long he could go between boops. The record was 17 minutes, and he'd been visibly distressed by minute 12. The Galactic Council's Xenobiology Department sent 3 research teams to study the phenomenon. None of them could explain it in scientific terms. Vrelnians simply didn't bond with other species. They didn't seek affection. They certainly didn't become completely dependent on repetitive nose-tapping for emotional stability. But Scar did, because humans, the researchers eventually concluded, had a peculiar talent for looking at the universe's most dangerous creatures and seeing something that needed love. They called it foolishness. They called it recklessness. The humans called it compassion. And Scar, curled up on Mira's bunk demanding his bedtime boops, didn't care what anyone called it. He'd found his human. She'd found her strange, scaly, formerly feral companion. And the galaxy learned, once again, that humanity's most dangerous weapon wasn't their technology or their tenacity. It was their absolute refusal to see anything as unworthy of a chance at gentleness, even if it meant booping a death spawn on the nose.